Andrew. Can I just say, while I've got everybody here, I think I've got everybody now added onto the English Teams group, and you should also be on a breakout channel as well, so called something like Ing Jeffers or Ing Becker or whatever. If you haven't, could you maybe just post and tell me that your currently working email if you need me to add you in a different way? Okay, otherwise I'll assume everybody's got full access. All right, thank you.
Great, thanks, Catherine. And what I'll do, I'll stop every so often and we'll just pause. I know there are kind of breaks anyway, but I'll pause occasionally just to kind of go over things and ask questions and make sure everyone's kind of keeping up. Phonics is one of those really interesting areas where we all have knowledge of phonics already. We all have this kind of inbuilt knowledge about how these things work, but there are some surprises with phonics, I think, and maybe some of the kind of expectations about how to teach phonics are embedded, and there are misunderstandings about how phonics works, and we'll touch upon some of those today as we work through this session. So hopefully you've watched up to recording. So we're going to look at action plans, feedback on action plans. So Catherine and I have looked at a range of action plans, and we've got some feedback on action plans and some thoughts about how to develop action plans further. We're going to talk about phonics, and we're going to do the storytelling activity after a short break at some point. How did you get on? Let's just stop quite quickly. So a couple of questions here. How did you get on with the action plans? How relevant, realistic do you think your targets are? Subject knowledge resource section, how did that help you? Any top tips? So I'm just going to just stop for a moment and just come back to the meeting and just stop sharing. So let's just muse upon this a little bit. So how did it go in terms of your experience with action planning? How did you find it? Great, JD, that's great. That's very good to hear. Excellent. Bits and pieces were useful. Any tips around that you found useful for yourself? Any kind of approaches you had? Yeah, I agree. I think smart targets are really tricky, and it's very interesting that I think that very experienced teachers also find it really difficult to set smart targets. So it's a kind of it's in process. So your targets will get smarter as we move on. Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think, Kelly, one of our feedback points is around the breadth of targets. We'll come back to that, that point that you make about actions being too broad. Yep, Maria, smart targets, that's very good. Went okay. Reading list online helped me find a range of resources. Very good indeed. That's great. That's very good to hear, Lucy. Alexandra, I felt it initially difficult as I felt I didn't know the curriculum at once. Yeah, of course, that's fine. So we're not expecting you suddenly to be experts in the curriculum or experts even around something we're talking about today, like phonics. It's not a slow burn because you've got to pick up this stuff quite quickly, but we're not expecting immediate expertise at the start. That's great to hear, Nishita. Yeah, Lucy, harder than I thought to narrow down a specific smart target. I think that is a real challenge, but it's something to aspire to. Useful process, Faye. Yeah, good. I'm glad it's so. So Sarah, you say about not knowing some of the formal terminology, but knowing it now. So that's interesting. That kind of that quick track to new knowledge, which is great. Aroshi, you asking about being specific. That's great. I wanted to improve on word classes, but wasn't sure to. Yeah, I think that's absolutely valid. I think if you want to be more specific and say, I'm going to start off with these things and get my head around these things, and then once that's ticked off, I'll create a new target to acknowledge the new understanding I have. Realizing that you need to relearn easy topics. It's interesting, isn't it, Tam? I mean, I think we make these, we're working with pupils of aged 5 to 11, and yet the sort of knowledge we have to have is often quite sophisticated. And we have to get our heads around that. Yeah, good point. That's fine. Amber, expand the range of resources you use. I'm glad it was a really interesting approach. Thanks, Maria, about Oxford OWL. Yeah, Amy, I wouldn't worry about the better overview. The better overview will come. It's fine. Sarah, I'm able to see what I need to do in what time frame. I went through my wrong answers from the audit and figured out what patterns, topics are. That's great. That's a really good use of the audit. So embrace the audit and dare I say, embrace errors. I think that's a really good approach to learning. Work out what you were getting wrong, and don't worry about it. But it just means something you need to focus on in terms of developing your understanding. That's absolutely fine. Useful from Emma. Tahira, difficult to set target when topics that need attention are quite broad. I think that's often a challenge. And maybe it's about thinking, well, okay, what is the broad area? And then within that broad area, where can I start? Okay, let's get rid of that one aspect and then move on to the next aspect of it. So it might be multiple small targets. Catherine, there's an interesting question from Maria there about approval before we actually start working on our goals.
I've just posted an answer about that, saying do use this feedback to just look again at your own targets, and then it might be that you look at them and you think, yes, it's all as it needs to be, I'm good to go. It may be that you need to just refine a target which is maybe a bit broad to something a little bit more specific. Don't start all over again, please, whatever you do. It's a working document, and then you can just crack on and get going on whichever of the targets you've identified as your first one.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Clara, can actions be too specific? I don't think they can, really.
No, I've said that. I just posted that.
That's fine. Oh, Twinkle. I'm glad to see Twinkle in.
Love a bit of Twinkle.
Yeah, Twinkle. I mean, I think Twinkle does have some great ideas. I would say I think it's a really useful support system. Twinkle. Just be. I'll come back to this during the program. I'm very cautious about worksheets, and the danger with Twinkle is it takes you into a world of worksheets when actually what you could do is just get children talking about something, or just get children designing things themselves, or just get them kind of like, why do you need to give them a Twinkle worksheet with a couple of columns in it when they can just use a ruler to make a couple of columns in their book? It seems a way of, I don't know, generating an awful lot of waste paper to me. So I would be cautious around Twinkle, but it might prompt your thinking. So you might see a nice way of presenting something that Twinkle suggests, and then you can kind of use that idea in your own teaching, in your own approach. Cool. Okay. Right. I'm going to go back to the presentation if I can work out how to do that again. There we go. Are we there again, Catherine? Am I back to?
Yes, we certainly are.
Cool, right. So some points here. So we were thinking here about general feedback on your action plans. We were impressed by the uncomplicated use of language. So, and this is great in terms of preparing you to write at master's level. It's keeping it simple, keeping your message really clear, and making it absolutely clear where you are voicing your opinion rather than something that's evidence informed. It's really important to kind of have that clear barrier between this thing I'm saying is backed up by literature, this thing I'm saying is just what I feel, and that's really significant. the honesty about areas for development, spoken English, EAL pronunciation, phonics in experience, etc., etc. Honesty is obviously very important. Oops, excuse me. Best ones reflect on how their own experiences, confidence in English will impact on their role as teachers of English. Great, very good. So things to consider. Consider switching on your grammar and spell checks. Yeah, I noticed that some of you, I don't know, because I'm viewing it from my word system, and that flagged up some errors. So when you get a little squiggly line either underneath a word or underneath a clause or a phrase, it suggests that it needs some rethinking. Now, the problem with the spell check is that often they are set, it doesn't often recognize names, or it certainly doesn't recognize names that are not kind of Western European English names. So it might have a squiggly line under simply because it doesn't recognize that kind of name formula, in which case don't worry about it. But often it will flag up that you've got an incorrect word there, or a word that is not recognized, the spelling is not recognized. So have a look at it, use it as a critical friend. Sometimes you'll have a squiggly line under a clause, or sometimes even under a sentence. If it's under a sentence, it's probably flagging up that you've not written a full sentence. It's identified that you have written either a subordinate clause, which requires a main clause to make it into a full sentence. We'll come back to that later on when we're talking about grammar and sentence construction. Or for some reason, the sentence requires something extra to make it into a full sentence. So it's there for a reason. So switch on your grammar and spell checks and use them as a friend, as an automated friend to correct your work. Yeah, exactly. So that's followed up with the point there about rereading and editing and up-leveling your written English. Don't forget that you're going to be the model of good writing for your pupils in the classroom. So that's the thing to really think about. If you find writing in English sometimes challenging, make sure you've got some support mechanisms like your spell check and your grammar check to make sure that you've got the stuff, presenting information to pupils correctly. Be succinct. This is another master's level thing. Be succinct. So if you say you've done something frequently, you don't also need to say that you've done it many times. So you know, I go to the library frequently and have visited many times. It's in the same, you know, it's the same thing. Frequently and many times mean essentially the same thing. So using both terms means one of them is redundant. Sometimes people interested in writing talk about tautology, and tautology is where you use language unnecessarily. You're using other words which are unnecessary. So a kind of classic example would be to say that you're doing something more better. So not that I came across this in your writing, but if you say something is better, you don't need the word more as well, because better means more. So just be careful about that. Avoid tautology, avoid using redundant words, unnecessary words. Consider revising how to use apostrophes. This is a favourite thing for me. Apostrophes. You've got two reasons for using apostrophes. One is to do with possession. So Andrew's book is green. Andrew apostrophe S, book is green. So that's about possession, the book that belongs to Andrew. For contraction, it's where you're missing letters out. So for example, it's a sunny day. IT apostrophe S, a sunny day. So that's for contraction, where you've taken a letter out. That's an apostrophe. It's is always a tricky one. If you're using the word it's to indicate possession, so for example, if you were writing education is a fascinating area, its appeal is the range of subjects one needs to consider. Its appeal, so when you're writing its appeal, meaning the appeal of education, its appeal, that it doesn't have an apostrophe. So you only use an apostrophe in the word it's when it's a contraction, when it should be saying it is. So if it's just it's, meaning the thing that belongs to it, you don't use an apostrophe. Check you've completed the reflection and don't forget to add the annotated bibliography as you go. Targets. The best targets were clear, specific and focused. The targets that were clearest include an indication of something practical you would be able to do as a consequence of completing the action. Yeah, we both felt that the idea of saying, including within your target, the phrase "to be able to" would push you into thinking about something practical that you would be able to do as a consequence of meeting the target. So I think there was one I read which was about word types, and the target was to be able to identify specific word types in a passage of reading. So it was kind of, okay, not only have I learned what those different word types are, but I can actually find them in some, in a passage, and that made a load of sense to me. Some have included a speaking or children's literature target. Great. Be clear and specific with your targets. To develop my understanding of phonics, or to understand how to use speech and sound effectively, are huge things. So think about within that area something a bit more specific. So within the kind of huge range of the subject of phonics, something more precise to focus on. Don't bundle several targets into one, e.g. a target that includes word classes, clauses, phrases, tenses, etc., makes it much more complicated for you to satisfy, because you're trying to tick off all of those parallel targets at the same time. Ensure targets are written as such, not just labeled digraphs and trigraphs. So what do you want to do with digraphs and trigraphs? We're going to come up to encounter digraphs and trigraphs later on. Ensure you are developing broad English subject knowledge. If all three targets are phonics, your next target should include other areas, morphology, grammar, etc. Oh, excuse me, I forget that. I'm going to stop for a moment because I've done something silly with this. So I'm just going to come out of this for a moment, come back to the group, and just kind of have a quick chat about those points so far. Any thoughts? Does that make clear? Is it clear about the feedback on your target setting? Cool, thank you. Thanks, Maria. Great. Super. Lovely. That's great. Okay, I'll go back again. And I've done something silly with my PowerPoint, so let me just go back and...
Can I just pop in while you're fiddling around a little bit? And just to say, apologies to those, well done to everybody who did actually manage to upload their action plans in the face of extreme technological issues yesterday, which was the vast majority of you. So well done, because you obviously, kept battling on with the system. Some of you haven't, and I can quite understand that it has been very problematical. I have reopened the hand-in, the Turnitin hand-in place. So can you please, as soon as you're able to, hopefully Moodle's behaving itself better, those of you who haven't uploaded your action plans, upload them as soon as you can after this, basically. It will stop me hassling you in a nice way about them. Okay, so you will benefit. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Right, I think I'm back where I was again now. Catherine, you'll give me a shout if I'm going really too slowly.
I will do.
All right. So a little bit about digraphs and trigraphs, and we will come on to digraphs and trigraphs later on. With your targets, it might be good to focus on a particular year group rather than the whole of the expanse of the curriculum, which is such a huge thing. Okay, actions, relevant, realistic actions which use a range of resources, books, websites, phonics workbooks. I saw some examples of observing lessons. Obviously, you don't quite know what it's going to look like yet, but that makes total sense to have that as an action. Ensure the actions meet the targets. Some of the completion dates seem a long way away. Yes, I wondered about that. So it was kind of, you've got your sort of deadline as the 19th of February, but actually some of those things like getting your head around kind of basic understanding of phonics is going to happen much sooner than that. So think about where that understanding is going to be, and then what might your follow-up target be, which might take you through to the 19th of February. Annotated bibliography. You don't need to include absolutely everything. Yeah, a solid indicative reference list, key readings. No need to annotate everything.
Yeah, can I just say, Andrew, sorry to
Please.
pop in again, but I had a very useful meeting tutorial with somebody who mentioned that there was quite a lot of discussion about the annotated bibliographies. Now, in my head, it should show that you have used a range of sort of sensible resources. You do not need to put every last little website you visited, because that would be a very long and, let's be honest, very boring list. What that should show is some academic engagement, I think, with some of the core texts that we've identified. So you might read a chapter in the systematic phonics book, for example. You might read a chapter in the very good Teresa Kremen book, for example. Those are the sorts of things we'd be looking to see, but don't think, you know, there's a huge expectation for everything in a very, very long bibliography. It's just to show that you can handle referencing and that you have accessed, as I say, a solid range of materials.
Thanks, Catherine. That's really helpful. Yeah, it's good. It's a good habit to get into, not too much. With your master's stuff, then you're thinking about longer reference lists to back up your ideas within your master's thinking. But for at this level, what you're looking for is solid core stuff to support your subject knowledge development. Okay, phonics. So we're looking at what phonics is. We're going to address the idea of synthetic and systematic phonics, SSP. Look at some key terminology. Look at blending, the idea of blending and segmenting. We'll come back to that later on. Articulating phonemes accurately, and the relationship between phonemes and graphemes. So quite a lot to take on. I suspect what will happen is at the end of this session, you'll think, okay, I just need to go back and look at that again, or I've got some stuff there, but I didn't quite understand that. I think phonics is one of those things that you will develop confidence with. The purpose of today is to sort of plant a seed, establish a foundation, but it's just not going to be all like that straight away. It's complex. It appears to be simple, but it's complex, and there's a lot of technical language to get your head around, and what we're actually talking about is sometimes quite complicated, although we're asking 3- and 4-year-olds to get their head around lots of this stuff. Catherine, does that make sense?
Yes, sorry, I'd muted myself because there's workmen in the background intermittently.
Understood. I've got a dog here, incidentally, so if the snoring isn't me, it's the dog. Okay. Okay. Oh, a lollipop stick. I haven't got my lollipop sticks. Could you?
No, I've got my substitute lollipop sticks. So I don't know if I mentioned to everybody last week that this is a classic primary school teacher thing. And as you probably know, I used to be a primary school teacher, so I can't shake the habit. Normally, I will go down to Starbucks and get a handful of, you know, the wooden stirrers and write pupils' names on those. But it seemed a bit not the right thing to do at the moment to do that. So I've compromised and I've got everybody's name on a little blue piece of cards in a little jar. So at any point where we pick a stick, we can pick a name, and if we pick you and you're in the meeting, obviously, then if you unmute yourself and say anything, if that makes you freeze, I would never ever make a child say something. Well, you can't anyway. So you can always just pop on and say phone a friend if you've had a bit of a brain freeze moment, which happens to all of us. Okay, so it's not supposed to be a pressure thing, but it's a really good way of making sure that you don't keep asking the same competent, confident people, because this will happen in a classroom. You'll realise you're only talking to about 5 pupils in the class, and then you need to branch out to hear other voices. Okay, so there we go. So the question is, as you will hopefully have seen in the early reading session, so hopefully you'll have had a chance to watch my recording of that, which is the key report that was sort of the basis for suggesting that phonics was a very important sort of keystone of successful everything else really, reading, spelling and writing. So I'm going to riffle my what's it? And oh, we've come up with actually, funny enough, another Catherine Jaramillo Guerrero. So Catherine, if you're out there, can you think of the name of the report? I know she's there because I've seen her in the participants. Are you there, Catherine? Well, okay, right, I'm going to pick somebody else. Okay, this time we've got Maria Iglesias Garcia, who I've also seen in the participants. Maria, do you know which report this was?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, sorry, I didn't know. I don't know, sorry.
Okay, let's phone a friend. Last time, third time lucky. This is Victoria. No, oh dear. Okay, so somebody type for me. What's the name of the report? It's all right, Victoria, not to worry. But if anybody hasn't seen the early reading session, it's really important that you do get round to it at some point because it's quite, you know, a building block. So we have got lots of replies. I can't see the replies for a minute when they all pop up one after another, so bear with me. Yeah, I think Glenn, did you pip to the post the Rose Review? So yes, it is in fact the Rose Review.
That's great. And I mean, there are other interesting things about the research that led to the Rose Review and the idea of the Clackmannanshire research, where they did some work around systematic teaching of phonics with actually quite a specific cohort. And that was one of the things that triggered Rose's thinking around systematic teaching of phonics. So it's interesting that quite a limited piece of research led to basically a reshaping of the way we think about the teaching of early reading. Okay, there we go. Got Rose Review. So phonics. Okay, so at its simplest, it's a relationship between a letter sound and a symbol. So what we've got there is M-A-N or M-A-N. Now I'm going to start to talk about the clipped approach to phonics. This is a key thing that you need to start to get your head around when we're working with pupils around phonics. So kind of in an old school way, you might go into school and you may hear some not great examples of phonics teaching where letters are pronounced, or rather phonemes are pronounced with their kind of traditional letter sound. So M, the letter M as M and A and What we're trying to do is kind of get into a more clipped approach. So in this case man, because by blending those three phonemes we come to the word man. We make the sound man. Man. The issue with phonics is the thing we're trying to do is we're hearing different sounds and how the sounds represent the different letters, matching sounds to symbols. How best to teach. Now, I guess the other thing to talk about here, I mean, Catherine, I was thinking about this with our lecture today, with our discussion today, is that when we're talking about phonics, we are talking specifically about the process of decoding in terms of reading. So
yeah, we do mention encoding as well, but very much it's all about the decoding. What I always think it's helpful to think of as the squiggles on the page, the symbols, and turning those into sounds.
And the issue here for us to remember here is what any child can do this, go through this blending process of knowing that the letter M, the grapheme M makes the sound M, and the grapheme A makes the sound A, and the grapheme N makes the sound N, and can blend those together, M and man. But that doesn't mean they know what the word man means. I mean, I'm taking that as a kind of very simple example. So this is about decoding working out what the sound is made by combining these different phonemes. It's not understanding what the content of the text is. And that's important for us to begin to remember that, where you may have perhaps a very, very fluent decoder, a child who can read everything using the phonics process, but who doesn't necessarily understand anything about what they're reading. Okay, there we go. Written language can be compared to a code. So knowing the sounds of individual letters and how those letters sound when they're combined will help children decode words as they read. This is some stuff from the National Literacy Trust. So we've got this relationship between reading, which is to do with blending sounds, and writing, which is to do with segmenting sounds. So breaking words apart in order to work out how to write them, and combining sounds, blending them in order to work out how to read words. So if I have the word man, if I want to write the word man, I would go man, M-A-N. It works in the opposite way around to work out how to spell words, basically. Decoding and encoding builds on that. We're working on an alphabetic principle. Children need to make a connection that speech can be turned into print and vice versa. So if you are working in an early years environment, if you're looking forward to becoming a teacher in a nursery classroom or potentially a reception classroom, or you're working with children who are delayed somehow in their understanding of reading and writing, you need a fundamental initial step, which is to understand that speech can be turned into print. So that stuff we see on the page matches somehow the things that we say out loud. It's the kind of fundamental understanding that this code is linked somehow to the words that come out of our mouths. And we've got that reversing thing about decoding, and which is reading, and encoding, which is writing. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to stop here. We're going to have a think about this. How many different ways can you think of to write the sound? Now the sound here is k. So as in the initial sound of Catherine's name. So how many different ways can you think of to write the sound? I'm going to make a quick note of them. You could add them into the chat, actually. That might work. What do you think, Catherine?
Nice, I like that. Bit of teamwork.
Okay. Let's have some suggestions. And if the suggestions already come up, so look at other people's suggestions and see if you can add something that hasn't already been added. So how can you make the sound? Are you okay monitoring that, Catherine?
Yeah, I do have the problem that as soon as other people answer, it goes over the responses. So I have to work a way around that. So I'm on a slight lag, but bear with me. Okay, so we've got K, the letter K, the single C, the CK.
Yep.
I like Maria. We've got a Q and a U, which is true actually, especially not in English, but anyway. Kikinka, I always like a kikinka. So okay, CK as well. Lucy, yep. I understand what you mean with the KIKAKE, but actually that's not the K sound by itself. So what we'll be talking about as we go along is this idea of pure sounds stripped back to the absolute bare minimum it can actually be. Yep. Yeah.
Great. That sounds great. It's picked off lots of the ones we were suggesting. So we've got the C as in collect. Actually, you've got it twice there. You've got the initial sound and that cluster of consonants at the end, which make the sound kt, kt. But you can separate those two sounds. That kind of picks up the point that was just made there. So collect, you've got a k and a t at the end. So two short phonemes combined there. So collect. K as in park, park. CK as in the final sound of back. Now, and there, of course, you've got two consonants together, which you cannot separate. So this is quite interesting, where we get consonants you can separate. You can hear with the end of the word collect, collect, collect. You've got two distinct phonemes, k and t, collect. At the end of the word back, that k sound, two consonants together, but with a single phoneme. You can't separate the C, the sound of the C from the sound of the K. So it's a single phoneme. I think it was Maria who suggested QU, so words like key, as in key that you would have at where boats park. QUAY, key. So yeah, possibly not always in English, but definitely there are examples in English. And CH is an interesting one. So CH, often words which are derived, I think, from Greek. So things like chaos, which is CHAOS, chaos. I can't immediately think of, oh, chasm. That's CH, isn't it, I think? Catherine? Chasm?
Yes, it is, absolutely. We've got some really nice examples coming up on the chat. And Christmas, of course, is one.
Of course, yeah.
Possibly less Greek, that one.
Yeah.
But yes.
I wonder if it is Greek. I wonder if it might
Well,
have.
I was just wondering that when I said that. I'm going to have to investigate that.
Yeah, it might have because of early translations of the Bible, perhaps.
Yeah.
Might have been in Greek. I don't know how it was. Anyway, so you've got CH as a hard k sound. So this is kind of one of the complications of the English language, is that there aren't any simple ways of thinking about this. There are lots of different ways of making this sound using phonemes in the English language. So it's a complicated language. Okay, so phonological awareness is about tuning in, pupils, children being aware of the sound structure of words. If they've got it, it's a strong indicator that they will have early reading skills and will be able to achieve as early readers. So we've got some stuff here about development of phonological awareness. Starts with larger units. So we talk about syllables, and we're going to come back to syllables a little bit later on. And we're going to talk about onset and rhyme, and we're going to come on to that a little bit later on. So it's important to understand that I suspect that we are all pretty familiar with the idea of syllables. Perhaps we'll have ideas about onset and rhyme, but might not know onset and rhyme as onset and rhyme. Note the spelling of rhyme there, R-I-M-E, not R-H-Y-M-E. So just bear that in mind. So onset and rhyme is something that I suspect we are familiar with, but might not know it as onset and rhyme. And then we've got phonemes, which is perhaps this new area that we're going to think about today. Okay, syllables. So how many syllables in your first name? We're going to do some pick a sticking. I'll do mine as an example. So my name is Andrew, and that has 2 syllables. Andrew. Andrew. Catherine is an interesting name. Catherine.
I think so.
but depending on how one pronounces Catherine, it might have different numbers of syllables.
I go for 2 myself, but yeah, it's contentious.
So if you would, so if you're, I guess if you spell your name's Kathryn, Catherine. But if it's if your name, let's just say you were doing this with us now, and you were the first wife of Henry VIII, so you were Catherine of Aragon. I think that would be Catherine. 3 syllables.
Well, you see, arguably it's what you call a medial vowel, so it gets swallowed up. So although I have an E in the middle, which is a medial vowel, I say Catherine.
Okay.
So, but Catherine of Aragon might well disagree with me.
Yeah, indeed. I haven't consulted with her, but it's an interesting question. Okay, so we're going to do some pick a sticking, Catherine.
Okay, So how many syllables in syllable? And I just the two pictures there are the when you're getting children to recognise syllables, the clapping is the easiest. So every time you clap, it's like a beat is a syllable. But the one that somebody showed me only not very long ago actually is if you put your hand underneath your chin and you speak the name, every time your jaw moves, that's a syllable. And I think and children really like that. So
really nice.
maybe if you haven't had a go with that, have a little go with that. And then I'm going to ask, actually, is she in? I think Humaira, is she in? Yes, I think she is actually. Humaira, how many syllables in syllable do you think? Humaira, but we have got an answer from Uber. Thank you, Uber, which is 3. And also, is it a Buzzy? I'm getting confused now with my first and last names. But anyway, 3 is good, so syllable.
Syllable. Great, very good. So syllables, but we need to be careful now. So syllables are clear. That's something we're probably quite used to. If you are musical, for example, you're probably familiar with syllables because syllables is kind of how we kind of structure song, particularly around having a different note for each syllable in a song. Syllable. Okay. Largest units of sound in a word. Words can be monosyllabic or polysyllabic. So monosyllabic words have one syllable only. Words like but, and, there, hair, horse, dog, cat, house, sand, one syllable. Polysyllabic words have more than one syllable. Elephant, apartment, geography, etc. So syllables refer to the number of beats in the sound, or I like that, it's really great, the device where putting your hand under the mouth and feeling jaw movement for identifying the number of syllables in a word. Brilliant. And it's accessible according to Perkins, the most accessible unit of sound for beginner readers. And obviously lots of opportunities for clapping games. You've got your year 1 group in a circle and you go around and they start off with their names. So one after another, take turns, clap, say your name and clap the number of syllables, or say your name and clap the syllables at the same time. And then you could maybe make it a bit harder. So think about animals with 2 syllables, animals with 3 syllables, etc. Onset and rhyme. So onset and rhyme is where you, I guess through poetry, you might be most aware of onset and rhyme, where each syllable can be broken down into smaller units of sound. So, for example, the words here in the onset section, we've got the onsets highlighted in red. So these are monosyllabic words: star, stone, stick. But we can split the sounds into onset and rhyme. So we've got the st of star, the st of stone, and the st of stick. Now, the reason why that's different to phonemes is because the st can be further subdivided into the s and the t. So the phoneme is going to be our smallest unit of sound. With onset, we're talking about blends of phonemes. Rhyme, so we've got the same rhyme there in the words pin, spin, chin, and din. The rhyme in all of those cases is in. You'll sense there's a kind of a similarity or a relationship between rhyme, R-I-M-E, and rhyme, R-H-Y-M-E, because that's used where we're using rhyme in poetry. So you can imagine a simple rhyming poetry in which the alternate lines end with the words pin, spin, chin, and din, for example. It wouldn't be a classic, but it might be a model that you'd have in a simple rhyming poem. So segmentation is some So Goswami and Brian suggest that it's easier to start with onset and rhyme before you move on to more complex phonological awareness. A valuable tool, according to Adams, very useful in word generation. It's already sort of suggesting to us some games that you might have with your, let's say, year 1 class or your year 2 class, or even with your older class, if you were looking at something like limericks and you wanted to develop something that does involve rhyming with older pupils. So you've got, think about your kind of word families there with onset or rhyme word families: cat, bat, hat, mat, chat, fat, splat, etc., etc. Lots of possibilities there, lots of potential activities. Okay, here we go. Let's do this. Okay, so again, we've got 37 common rhymes there. We've got the rhyme ick, I-C-K. How many words ending in the rhyme I-C-K can you jot down in a minute? Now, Catherine, if I hit this thing here, is it going to give us a countdown?
I really hope so. Have you got your sound switched on? Sort of. There's a little button below that you might be able to see below the slides, and it will say something like share computer audio.
Oh, hang on. Arrow option, no. Screen, no. Last viewed.
No. Is it something below, even below that bit? Thing, I
can't go below that. I've got my whole screen taken up with the
well, that's slide. A shame, because it's really nice. It sort of eats up the string and then it explodes. Oh, we'll have to just imagine that.
All right. Okay. I'm gonna see what happens. I'm gonna hit that. And go on. So are you ready? So as many.
And it's ink, I-N-K. By the way, there's some confusion going on the chat.
Yeah, ink, I-N-K.
Yeah.
Here we go. Oh, it's not doing it for me.
Oh. I'm a big fan of timers.
Yeah, I like
when they work.
Oh, what's this? No, it's not doing it for me. It's not going live for me. Shall I give you?
We'll imagine a minute. Oh, I mean, there's lots of okay. Options coming through now.
Go for it. Go on. Good. Excellent. Wow, Jessica, that's very impressive. Excellent. Stink. Very good.
If you've got quite a lot of the monosyllabic ones, try for some polysyllabic ones. Push yourselves.
Yeah, good point.
I like brink. I'm not sure about something. I have to say that's a negative point right there.
Overthink, very good.
Overthink, I like it, Clara.
Very nice.
Oh.
Great. And you can see how this would work as a kind of fun filler. I mean, I can imagine this as, you've got 2 minutes before lunch. You've been talking about sounds of your class. You've not got time to read a story. Let's do this. Interlink, excellent.
Oh, very good.
Hyperlink,
Skill
very good.
Cooking on gas. Hyperlink. Now we're talking.
Good wink.
Good wink. Love it, Kieran.
Excellent. Very good. Very good. So you can see anyway. It's an interesting activity to get your pupils to start to think about the links. Dare I say countersink?
Countersink.
Oh,
technical. Like it.
Somebody with some DIY.
Well done, Azra.
Good. Excellent. Great. Fantastic. Thank you. Let me go back to this thing here. I'm still there. Great. So those are our rhymes. So we've got 2 approaches to teaching phonics. So we're now moving on to phonics now, analytic phonics, which is about identifying patterns, relationships between sounds and words, using things like onset, rhyme, etc., etc.
And can I just point in here, Andrew? Sorry, just to say that. So I lived in Scotland for the first 6 years of my life, and that was very much the approach they took in Scotland in primary schools at that point. So it was all about the building up these word families with the patterns like that. Whereas what we see in England now tends to be this synthetic approach.
Thank you. And this, so synthetic, when people talk about phonics now in England, they mean synthetic, systematic, synthetic phonics. So teaching individual phonemes. So phoneme is the smallest unit of sound in a systematic way. So you can see at the end there, so for example, children are taught to take a single syllable word such as cat apart into its 3 letters, C-A-T, pronounce a phoneme for each letter in turn. I'm going to do some phoneme fingers now. So we've got k, at, k, at, and then blend them together to form the word cat. So cat. Note that one thing that I think when you're new to phonemes that might be new is we're not using the alphabetical sound of the letter. So A is not sounded A, it's sounded A. T is not sounded T, it's sounded T. C is not sounded C, it's sounded K. And we need those sounds in order to enable us to go through this process of blending for the purposes of reading and later on segmenting for the purposes of writing, or spelling and writing. Okay, what are phonemes? How many phonemes are there in the English language? Okay, can I do? No, I've. Oh,
no, I couldn't. I've not worked that out yet.
Oh, sorry. I was hoping
That's
I could
all
move
right.
it
Have a moment
slightly.
to think about it.
Okay.
Maria's got an answer.
Well done. Sorry, my fault. So, smallest units of sound. That's what a phoneme is. 44 phonemes in the English language, 37 in Europe, in French, 55 to 67 in Mandarin, depending on which source of information you look at. So we've got a lot of phonemes in English. I suspect that there are more than that, because there are some subtleties around phonemic knowledge in English, but we'll come on to that, or we might talk about that or discuss that later on. There we go. So we've got, let me just get that out of the way there. We've got consonant phonemes, which require combinations of consonants, and we've got vowel phonemes, which are combinations of vowels, individual vowels and combinations of vowels. You'll see here in this context, AY, we're using the Y there and thinking of that as a vowel. And of course, IGH, the sound I, as in high, as the opposite of low, IGH is a single sound. And I guess the way to start to think about that is we don't separate those 3 letters, those 3 graphemes. We don't go I, G, H to make the sound I. It's just the sound I. It's a single sound. It's the smallest unit of sound that we can make. So those 3 letters there, I, G, H, combine to make a single sound. Note, I think an area that some people find quite complicated is the NG combination at the end of a word like thing. So you've got the th, which is, you can't separate the th. You've got the I, and you've got the at the end. We don't say nga, it's So thinking ng as a inseparable combination. I like this, yes, the idea of stretching or bouncing. So with some of these consonants particularly, we've got the stretching ones like sh and and r or r, and the various sounds for f. So we've got f, as in kerfuffle, and f as in physics. But you've also got the bouncing consonants, so b, k, d, g. I guess they're harder, the bouncing consonants. Catherine, what did you notice?
Well, what I was hoping that people would notice was that it's blindingly obvious, but I think it's worth pointing out that the same phoneme, so for example, the I sound that you were talking about, can be spelt in one of at least 4 different ways in English, which is one of the reasons why it's really hard to learn English, because the rules, it has rules, but it breaks rules a lot, and it has a much more of a complexity to it than a lot of other languages.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to make a quick point about the consonant, the phoneme th. I mean, I think that's a really complicated one, particularly for beginner readers, because actually we use what in theory is one phoneme. We use it in lots of different ways with different sounds. So, for example, the th we use in thing, is different from the th we use in a word like there, there. So that involves a tongue beneath your front teeth and a kind of slightly buzzing sound, there. And that's different from the th, which you use in a word like thing. Does that make sense? It's really subtle, but I think we just need to be conscious of this when we're introducing these sounds to young learners. Think about what you've got to do to make that sound work.
Andrew, can I just pop in, because we've had quite an interesting point by Amy on the chat,
Yes, yeah.
Which is just asking about how this then works in terms of dialects and accents, which is something that we get asked a lot, often from people whose first language isn't English, but also from people with very strong regional accents. And the answer is not to be worried about teaching phonics if you do have a strong accent, or you're aware that you're bringing, different intonation, if you like, into teaching phonics. You need to be aware of the pure sounds that we're talking about now, and you model those in as sort of standard English as you possibly can. But it's not a deal breaker if you're teaching it with, say, I've seen some excellent phonics teachers with, for example, very strong Australian accents, and it might mean that the pupils they teach might take on a slight Australian twang, but it's not a deal breaker because they're still teaching the correct rules. Okay, so I would say that, sometimes you might be aware, if you've got a particularly broad accent, you might need to, when you're teaching phonics, to kind of smooth that out to the best of your ability. Like, you should always be modeling, the most received stuff that you can, but it's not, you shouldn't ever feel inhibited from teaching phonics because you're aware that, you have a strong accent, for example. It's not a problem.
Yeah. It's about awareness. I mean, it's being conscious of your accent and absolutely sort of celebrating it, and perhaps talking to the pupils about your accent.
I always think a bit of honesty goes a long way, and you just say, I say it like this. So I worked with a lovely partner teacher who was from the northeast. I mean, I'm from the northeast, but she's got a very beautiful, rich northeastern accent. So she would say hookah-dock. Can't even do it properly, and the children she taught phonics to, they didn't end up with that ooh sound that she did at all. So it's not a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I taught with an absolutely brilliant teacher who was great at teaching phonics and had a very, very strong East London Cockney accent. And when she spoke to me, so particularly words like towel. So with my received pronunciation, I say towel, terribly BBC, towel. She says towel. That was a feature of her East London accent. But she just had to be conscious of that when she was sharing or pronouncing words to the children within the context of phonics. Just be aware of it and talk to them about it and explain what's going on. Okay. Let's go back there again. I think there were some more queries went in. I guess I probably should crack on, Catherine.
Absolutely. I was going to give you a gentle nudge. But actually, we've got a couple of videos that perhaps we can leave people to watch in their own time. This one, there's a link here, the speed sound, is super useful, I think. Right. I don't know if we're going to get it with sound, but if not, can I just totally encourage people, if you haven't seen this,
Right.
to click on the link. It's also on Moodle. I've put everything that I can think of that's helpful on Moodle, so do check that. That's the chart, the speed sounds chart is on Moodle, and so is the link to this. It's just this lovely little girl called Sylvie pronouncing the pure sounds, sort of the sounds as they really should be said. Okay,
Brilliant.
so yeah.
Brilliant. And that pure sounds, it's something I mentioned at the very top of the session. So thinking about it's not m. That's really important. So let's just think about what would happen if you've got the word mum, M-U-M, on the page, and you are segmenting it in order to you're blending it. If you're pronouncing the m, if you're pronouncing it as m, blending that would give you M-A-M. M-A-M. Doesn't work. You've got to make sure that the smallest unit is Does that make sense? Think about
those are what's called, somebody was asking me about what a bouncy consonant phoneme was. So is your classic bouncy one, mum. So you keep it really short and clipped. Yeah. Cat. I mean, it's easier with I suppose really clipped ones like cat. Well, no, actually, I think it's easy to put an on the end of at. If you're being a bit sloppy with it, you have to cut it really short, so it's at. So it sounds like it sounds very artificial when you start off, but the point is you're teaching children to tune into the individual sounds. You're not adding extra ones.
That's a good point. So clipped was a word that was always used when I was teaching phonics. So it's really cutting it down to its bare minimum. So as Catherine was saying there, not t, but t, shortening it to the bare essentials, the pure sound. So that's a recommendation. So we're going to move on from that. So come back and have a look at that speed sounds clip. We've got some more examples here. Have a go at practicing the sounds out loud. It is a matter of practice, this stuff, becoming used to this, going through the process, watching yourself in the bathroom mirror, not being too not worrying about how you're looking. Don't forget that you're going to be doing this with children. Make it exciting. On your first placement, you'll get experience. You get to see how this is done in school. See the kind of strategies that teachers use for kind of embedding this with pupils, and their lack of self-consciousness when doing phonics teaching is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And can I just say, if one of the things that you put as a target for your action plan was to develop your understanding and correct articulation of phonemes, this could be a really good activity. If you watched the little Sylvie clip and you had a bit of a practice, that would be a really good action. So
yeah, absolutely. And that might be something you've accomplished by the beginning of November rather than by February. Okay, phonemes and graphemes. So phonemes and graphemes. Phonemes is what you hear. Grapheme is what you see or write. Now, this is Catherine's brilliant presentation, and I sat looking at this slide for about half an hour, thinking, is that some kind of sort of that graph there? Is that to do with some kind of achievement in phonics? And I couldn't work out what it was there for until I suddenly put two and two together and worked out it was just a way of remembering. So the graph is the visible. The grapheme is the visible thing. The phoneme is the hearing thing. So when people talk about phonemes, it's the sound. The grapheme is the thing that is visible on the page. It's complicated. Phonemes are represented by graphemes. A grapheme can consist of 1, 2, or more letters. A phoneme can be represented spelled in more than one way, kennel, cat. So that the phoneme k can be represented by the C or the K, or as we've also seen by the CK, or by the QU, or by the CH. The same grapheme symbol may represent more than one phoneme. So the grapheme in the word me makes the sound E. The grapheme E in the word met makes the sound eh. So the same grapheme may represent more than one phoneme, which is why it's a really complicated mechanism. What you're going to be teaching, you're going to be teaching grapheme-phoneme correspondence, so the relationship between the letter and the sound, the grapheme and the phoneme. You're going to be teaching beginner readers to blend phonemes. Cat. You're going to teach pupils segmenting words. We have the segments of orange there into the constituent phonemes in order to spell. So you've got the word cat. So you're going to try and break that down into a specific number of phonemes. In this case, it's going to be 3 phonemes, cat, 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 in order to spell. So you've got the idea of, you've got the word, you hear the word cat, you break it into its constituent phonemes, k, at, and then you know that k, the k is represented by a C or a K, the A is represented by the letter A, and the T is represented by the letter T. Of course, a child at the beginning stage might totally reasonably spell the word cat K-A-T. A child with really good phonic skills might go, well, okay, I can use a K for that phoneme as well as a C. So think about what pupils' responses might be. I suppose a very sophisticated child might spell the word, I mean, cat's not a very good example because cat's probably a word that pupils will learn quite quickly, but we've already discussed that you could spell the sound k using Q-U, so quite a sophisticated bit of thinking could involve a child spelling a word like cat, Q-U-A-T. Does that make sense? Using their kind of phonic skills. It's a reasonable shot at spelling the word cat, Q-U-A-T, because we know that Q-U, as in the word key, can make the sound k, and understanding that blending and segmenting are reversible processes. So SSP, that's our kind of an abbreviation you'll see a lot in schools. SSP, systematic synthetic phonics. The system is about it being incremental. You teach simple phonemes and graphemes, and you build up until you're dealing with things like trigraphs and digraphs, etc. later on. In theory, phonics teaching is done by the end of Key Stage 1. This is important. So it might be that you're teaching a Year 3 class or a Year 4 class, and it may be that some learners in that class haven't successfully got through the whole phonics teaching process, and it might mean that they had to do some catching up, and that might be something you have to put in place. The assumption is that most learners will have got through the phonics teaching process by the end of Key Stage 1. Sessions need to be short, fast-paced and engaging. Articulation is really important. Elements of blending and segmenting need to be included in your sessions. Lesson sounds, that's it's certainly what I used the most of all when I was teaching phonics. It's got lots of good ideas, the phases make sense, and it's a very useful resource. One of the issues about talking with you today about phonics is that different schools use different phonics systems. So some schools will use letters and sounds as their fundamental resource. Some schools will use Jolly Phonics. Some schools will use one of the Ruth Miskin packages. One of the things you've got to going to school is know fundamentally how it works, but be prepared to adapt your practice to fit in with the particular approach to SSP that the school is using. Okay. Catherine, how am I doing?
You're doing well. Yes, I'm just looking. I think we're going to struggle to fit in the whole of the storytelling, but you know that seems to be the thing that moves from week to week, and at some point it will happen. But I think it's really important to get to grips with phonics and just for everybody to come away feeling they've had a bit more clarification wherever you are, because I know there's a there's a very wide range of experience out there. Some people are teaching phonics and have taught phonics for years, and some people it's a brand new concept too. So I think it's good to let this one breathe.
Absolutely. Bilingual learners and phonics. Now I've talked to a lot of students who turn to phonics as a kind of first resort for supporting bilingual learners. And it's worth bearing in mind that there's limited research about synthetic phonics and bilingual children, and how that might be the best practice, the most effective way of supporting their developing understanding. I would argue, from a personal perspective, I would argue that the issue with depending on SSP as a kind of first resort with bilingual learners is that SSP is about decoding and encoding. It's not about understanding the meaning of words. And that might be a challenge for EAL learners in your classroom. So they might be really good at the encoding and the decoding. So decoding the phonics, they can make the sounds, they can read apparently with fluency, they can read everything you give them, but it's about understanding. So it's about thinking about reading not just being about decoding, it's about thinking of reading also being a process of comprehension. And I think that's an area I'd be just thoughtful about, critically thoughtful about, in terms of how you're supporting bilingual learners in your classroom. Oops. I've done something bad here. I'm just gonna come out briefly and then just have a quick reflection on that. How are we doing? Yeah, that's Amy. That's the point you make. It's a classic one, isn't it? The fish.
You see, she's a spoiler alert. I always do that every year in my spelling session, so everybody forget that you've seen that.
Yeah, it's a good one though, isn't it?
It's really good.
So it's yeah. I'll leave it to you to expand another time. But for example, GH at the end of the word cough gives you a f sound. GH makes the phoneme f. Anyway, interesting one to think about. Yes, when is the alphabet taught, or is it learnt in conjunction with phonics? I think, Alexandra, that's a question that depends very much on what different school practice is. Some schools, I think that some schools worry about the alphabet now and the sequence of letters, and I think it's a really useful thing to know, because obviously alphabetical order is really useful in lots of things we do as more mature learners. So it seems I think it depends. I'm gonna teach you a quick song. Catherine, am I allowed to do this?
Absolutely, I'm a gog.
Okay, so alphabet songs. So there's that one that goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You know that one. We're not going to learn that one. There's a problem with that one, I think, because when you get to the middle of it, you go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. The L, M, N, O, P is so quick that particularly young learners kind of just get in a muddle with it. There's a letter called L, M, N, O, P that comes after K and before, whatever comes after P. So there's a problem with that particular song. So mine is an alphabet rap. And it goes like this. There's no tune. We're just rapping. And it goes like this. I'll do it slowly to start with. It goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. And it uses the Z rather than Z, which you get in some American alphabet rhymes. So again, it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. So with your microphones off, otherwise it's going to be chaotic. Turn your microphones off, but we're going to do it all together. And I'm going to count you in after 4. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Excellent. A little bit faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. A, B, C, D, E, H, G. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Again, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Okay? Got it? Excellent. Right. That was kind of in answer to the question, when do you teach the alphabet? You teach it when you need to teach it, but I mean, I think there's some fun ways of teaching the alphabet quickly. Again, with fillers, that's another filler that you could use in your classroom. 2 minutes before lunch, let's learn this. Let's learn the alphabet rap. I've jumped a slide here, haven't I, Catherine? Sorry.
That's okay. So it was just a whistle stop tour through the phases. We don't spend much time on phase 1.
No.
Because that's very much the tuning into sound. So you'd spend an awful lot of time with young children with musical instruments and just thinking about the different sounds that different musical instruments make. The thing that I would encourage you, and probably for the sake of timing, we might again leave people to go and look at it in their own time, but I'm a huge fan of rhyming stories and whatever. And if you don't know Harry McClary, you're in for an absolute treat. I think I mentioned the books last week, but if you click on that, you should get a short video of somebody reading. There are cartoon versions, but I prefer the read version, and it's lovely, and it tunes children into rhyme in a really nice way.
Yeah, great idea. So we've got the purpose of this. So phase 2, the 19 letters, and to move children on from oral blending. First, letters taught in letters and sounds, L and S, letters and sounds, SATP. What's underneath this? I can't remember what.
I'm trying to remember. I think I might have been saying, why do you think, or how many words can, that was it. How many words can you make using those 4 letters?
Oh.
And to answer my own question, the point being that actually you can make quite a lot of words. So that's why they're simple, and they're actually very usable to children, because then they can make, quite a few words. And then if you add on the I comes next, is in the next set. So between all of that, you've got 2 vowels, and you can, you get quite a broad range of short words.
Absolutely. And then of course that also, these 4 letters present us with problems again. I mean, so obviously we've got, taps, and we've got pats, and we have got spat. But then you've got an interesting question about pronunciation here. Catherine, you'll have a view about this. So we've got P-A-S-T.
Well, you see, I'm northern, so I say past.
Yeah, and I say
you probably would say past. You're more Bath than me.
So suddenly
Bath or Bath.
That becomes, depending on where you are, what your regional accent is, it will be either an A sound, past, or an R sound, past, like the word bath. Again, I say bath. Somebody from a different region of the country might say bath, using a short vowel sound. So it's interesting, even with something as sort of what could be as straightforward as SATP, and then we've got I, and then we've got N coming after that, presents problems, challenges, things to think about. You've got your phonics workbook. Have a look at the file.
Yeah. So could I just say a little thing about that, Andrew? So basically we'll come back to the other phases in letters and sounds in the next session, and we'll look at those in more depth, and we'll do some activities. But it was just to give you a little sort of like the start of it all, so you had a bit of a framework going on. So I have done what I said I wouldn't do. I said I was no longer going to put files on the Teams site, because Julie had said, please could we not do that, because she wants to encourage you to use Moodle. Unfortunately, obviously, we've all suffered in the last 24 hours with Moodle, so I didn't want anybody to not have access. So I have put the phonics workbook on the Teams site, so it's there for you to download. It's also on Moodle. There is also a separate guidance document which just talks you through some of the content of it, so you'd find that helpful. That is on Moodle. Basically, what we'd like you to do, please, is, as it says, download it and work through it. And again, this could well be a phonics action, or part of it could go towards your phonics targets that you might have set yourselves. It is what it is. It's designed to help you feel more sort of confident about phonics. So you'd find in some places it's a little bit similar to the audit. The first chunk of it are some questions about the Rose review report, which we mentioned at the beginning, just because that's really important for you just to have that understanding of why systematic synthetic phonics was developed in across so many schools. Please cut and paste from the Rose report. You don't need to be writing your own paragraphs. Cut and pasting is absolutely fine. Okay, and then do that for next session, and then we'll give you a slot. The sort of the self-guided bit will be you going through. I'll reveal the answers, and you can mark your own. Okay, and then you will need to be uploading the completed and marked book with a little reflection. Okay, so again, it's not a pass-fail. Well, not really. You just need to do it. It's not graded. It's about you developing your subject knowledge. Okay, so make it work for you. Don't spend forever and a day on it if you were going to.
Yeah, that's really useful. We talked when we were kind of chatting before the session started about kind of being pragmatic about the work you've got to do. Do the stuff, but don't spend ages doing something that just needs you to go through a process. So be reasonable about it with yourself, with your own time. Do it efficiently, do it effectively, but don't try to do more than you're required to do.
And if you want to do it with somebody else and buddy up, study buddies is always very helpful. So I would always recommend that. Absolutely.
Thanks, Catherine. That's the resources and references slide. I think. Now this is another video that we can
skip. So basically, Letters and Sounds has a whole series of videos, and this is one of them. All of those, well, obviously, if you click on that, you can access it in your own time. And also, I've put the whole Letters and Sounds file on Moodle, so you've got access to it there as well. Okay, and it's useful if you're, do you know what? If you've had quite a lot of experience in young classrooms in the early years, it won't tell you much that you've not already seen and experienced for yourself. If you're quite brand new or very relatively new to the early years, then you might find it helpful to think about developing a language-rich environment for young children.
Great, thank you, Catherine. That's great. And then thinking about what your existing subject knowledge now. It's been a bit of a whistle-top tour today. There's a lot of stuff to get your head around. Start to think about your existing knowledge around what phonics is. This is all about TS3. Note, it's all about subject knowledge. How well do you understand these things? And thinking about rag rating them, red, amber, and green. So that's what you're going to be doing at 3-4. But what we haven't done yet. So, Catherine, what should we do? Should we have a short break and then try? I'm so sorry because I've gone blabbed on. Should we go?
No, I think it's probably due to the number of slides I put in. To be fair.
No, should we try and have a really short break and have a go at storytelling?
Yes, I mean, we could always reformat storytelling, and whether we do it in the groups as we were going to, or whether you could do your slot and then we could have, say, if a couple of students were happy to broadcast to the whole cohort, we could do it that way. I don't know how people would feel about that.
That works for me. So how are we looking for time? It's 2:25 now. Do you want to have a brief break and then come back and I'll string my story together?
That sounds excellent, yes.
All right. Sounds good. Okay, so give us 5. So it's now 2:25. I'll leave this space open, but I'll just nip off and get my my props.
And I'm going to nip off and get a cup of tea.
Yes, digraphs and trigraphs. So digraphs are where you have got two graphemes together making a single phoneme. So where you've got something like the PH of the word digraph, is a digraph because it's got two graphemes, the P and the H, working together to make a single inseparable phoneme. Like sh is a digraph. A trigraph is where you have three graphemes together making a single phoneme. Like I've got sudden.
IGH you used earlier.
Thank you. Yes, IGH, which I used earlier. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Thanks for doing. Yeah. So IGH is a trigraph because you've got three graphemes combining together to make a single phoneme. Okay. And then of course, you've got other ones where I'm just trying to think of things like like in the word through, where you've got three phonemes, the r and oo. So the th is a digraph, th. The r is on its own, and then you've got OUGH, which is four graphemes making a single phoneme. Or like off, as in the word. Well, actually, no. Off. Yes, through. Depending on how we're using off, you're absolutely right, Maria. So in the word cough, for example, OUGH would form two phonemes because you'd have k, o, the OU, and the f would come from the GH. But in the word through, you're absolutely right, you'd have the OUGH forming a single phoneme.
So, Andrew, I think some people are feeling a little bit brain dead with all the phonics. If you're not used to it, it's a lot of new terminology that we're throwing at you. Absolutely don't worry. The thing to take from today is phonemes and graphemes, basically. Yeah. So make sure you're confident with that. There are a couple of slides next week which will deal with digraphs, trigraphs, and actually Andrew was just talking about quadgraphs. Okay. So and actually I've got quite a helpful video, and I'll figure out properly how we get the videos working for next week of a teacher actually doing that, so you'll be able to see that. Okay.
Cool. Fabulous. Great. Okay, I will go and get my artifacts, and we're going to meet in. Make it 5 minutes, so at 2:33.
Yep. Perfect.
Cool. All right. My silent thing. Hi.
I am.
Hi, Catherine. Sorry for being drawn into the trigraph and digraph
Well,
forest of
it's a
terror.
teaser, isn't it, for next session?
Yeah.
The thing which I notice is, and I don't know why, but I always have this every year, is that quite a lot of people hear it as diagraph. They add an extra A, and I don't know why, but
Say
I've
it
seen,
again.
yeah.
What has an extra A?
They put an A into digraph, so it becomes diagraph. I've
Ah,
seen teachers do that in lessons actually, which
that's interesting.
yes. Oh look, we've got a volunteer to do their story.
Murray, do you want to tell your story now?
Sure thing.
I'd love you. I've suddenly got terrible stage fright.
I'm a performer, so for me, it's like being on stage.
I think that's exactly the way to think about teaching. It's a performance art.
Can you hear me?
Very clearly. Are you going to turn? Great.
Yes, my video is on.
Great.
All right. Can I just start, or do we wait for some people?
I think we've got a good turnout. So I think it's yo.
All right. So should I put a stopper on, so I'm sure a timer on, so I'm sure that I don't go over 5 minutes, or is it fine if I go 5 minutes 20 seconds?
I think it's fine if you go 5 minutes 20 seconds. That's absolutely brilliant.
Okay. So no stress. My story is written by me, and I only have some little notes. I don't have anything really written word by word. And the story is of a beautiful, beautiful model called Maggie, who lived in New York in the 80s, where about 1986, she had a career in modeling and was very, very, very lonely. And at the same time, she was very, very, very successful. The thing is, Maggie was gay, and not many people at the time were feeling really, really confident about talking about their sexuality and about their sexual preferences. And when Maggie saw Julie walking on a street in her beautiful bright red
Maria, we've lost your sound.
hear me?
Yes. No, no. Not at the moment. You came back very briefly and then you went again.
Okay, what about now?
That's good.
Fantastic. Where did I stop?
Maggie and the orange nail
Lipstick.
varnish. Lipstick.
All right. So Maggie saw Julie. Julie. So let's go back to sentences. So Maggie, as a model, after a photo shoot, was going down the streets of New York with all of the sounds and people walking around and crowds of people taking photographs. And when Julie, and she was wearing a lipstick, a bright red lipstick, which was kind of making her stand out in the crowd. And Julie, a photographer, was also walking down the street, and she saw her and she thought, oh my God, who is this beauty? Who is this woman? I'm falling in love. Well, they actually stopped, stared, and started talking to each other. But as much as their romance progressed, they realized they can't be together. Julie was a photographer. She had a beautiful Olympus AF1, which was in 1986, basically an iPhone of cameras. She took a photograph of Maggie in that beautiful lipstick. And she thought to herself, well, one day I will be in love again. But for now, we can't be together anymore because being gay and being openly in a relationship with another woman is illegal. Then Julie and Maggie basically lived separate lives. They haven't seen each other for years and years and years to go. And they were really, really sad and really, really lonely. And they felt like they would never, ever, ever meet anybody who would love them the way that Maggie loved Julie and Julie loved Maggie. And then one day in London, the two were shopping in Selfridges in Oxford Street. And it was the day of 13th of March, 2014, the day of Equality Act in the UK coming together and making gay marriage in the UK legal. They saw each other. They absolutely felt like they couldn't believe their eyes. They smiled and they just ran into each other's arms. And Julie said to Maggie, Maggie, I know you will not believe me, but here in my jeans, I have this ring, which I've been carrying with me every day until, well, hoping that one day I would actually meet you again. And I'm giving you this ring, and please, please be my wife. And Julie and Maggie went to closest office where you can get married and got married the same day and lived happily ever after. Thank you.
Woohoo! Good job.
Fantastic, great job, fabulous, Maria. Catherine, suddenly we've got lots.
I know. No, and I'm really sad that we haven't got around to doing it the proper way we were meant to.
Sorry.
Because usually last time we did this, nobody literally at all wanted to do this storytelling activity, so I got a bit sad about it. But now we've got lovely people like Maria who are just full of, you know, the sort of the enthusiasm you need to just go for it. So yes, what do you think we should do?
Well, we've got loads of volunteers.
We have.
Maria, that was fabulous. I loved.
Yes,
I loved
thank
the story.
you. Thank you.
I was just about to fall apart, and then suddenly you've got this re-meeting in Selfridges. Great.
Right, it has to happen. Everyone has to be with the people that they love, right?
Doesn't always work that way, though. Doesn't always work that way. Okay, here we go. So we've got, I think, the first person. I think
JD
said. Jake,
yeah.
do you want to share your story now? Is that okay, Catherine? We've started changing.
Yeah, lovely, brilliant. Carry on.
Hi.
Hi.
So my story is about Ollie the owl, Sid the sloth, and a banana, and it's called Favorite Foods. So one glorious spring morning, Ollie the owl was sat on his favorite branch in the big oak tree. All of a sudden, the cuckoo clocks chimed 11 o'clock, and Ollie realised it was time for his morning snack. Of all the food in the forest, Ollie's favourite snack was a banana. But as he peeled his banana and went to take a bite, his friend, Sid the sloth, climbed up to the branch to say hello. Before Ollie could greet his friend, Sid let out an enormous chuckle and started pointing at the banana that Ollie was holding. And it wasn't long before Ollie realised that Sid was laughing at him. Ollie's tummy began to feel funny and he noticed a lump forming in his throat. Eventually, he started to cry. Ollie didn't understand why his friend was making fun of him, and it made him feel really sad. Ollie, owls aren't supposed to eat bananas. What are you doing? With tears streaming down Ollie's face, he managed to say, But Sid, bananas are my favourite. Have you ever tried one? Sid became very confused and said, Of course I haven't tried a banana. I'm not a monkey, and only monkeys eat bananas. Bananas are not only for monkeys, Sid. Everyone can enjoy them. Why don't you try a little bit and see for yourself? Sid had realised that he made his friend feel really sad and started to feel bad. Okay, I'll try some banana to see if I like it, agreed Sid. Sid took one bite of the banana and a look of amazement shot across his face. This is the best morning snack I have ever eaten. Thank you for sharing, Ollie. Please could I have some more? Cried Sid. Of course you can, Sid, but next time you don't understand why someone is doing something, ask them about it before laughing. You could really hurt someone's feelings, described Ollie. I'm really sorry I hurt your feelings, Ollie. I didn't mean to. Next time I'll try to be more understanding, voiced Sid. And from that day on, every morning at 11 o'clock, Ollie and Sid met at the branch in the big oak tree to share their favourite snack, a banana.
Oh, that was lovely as well. Thank you.
Brilliant.
And I think that's the thing about just like going for it and like not just being in the moment of the story and not worrying about making mistakes, because the children are so forgiving when you're doing storytelling. They just love being told a story, and it doesn't matter if you don't even know where it's going.
Yeah, that's great, and a bit of a lesson in there as well, a sort of moral purpose. It's great, fabulous job. I think there's at least one other.
Amber and Vinette had both nominated themselves as willing victims.
Amber, who's next, Catherine?
Amber, if we're strictly in order.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. My story is quite similar because it was about trying new foods, and the 3 items I've got: my gnome, this carrot toy thing, and this little puppet I had in my room. So Great. I'll just start the story.
Go for it.
So let me introduce you to Norman the gnome. He lives in a great green garden where many things grow. From parsnips and peppers, peas and potatoes, there is only one vegetable that Norman just loathes. A long, thin carrot is pulled from the dirt. Come on, Norman, one bite wouldn't hurt. No, 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 absolutely not. I won't eat carrots, so just leave them here to rot. All his friends laugh. What a stubborn gnome. If he never tries a carrot, how will he ever know? There were still many vegetables that Norman would eat, like beans, beetroot, and even broccoli. Oh, Norman, just tell us why. You would love carrots if you just gave them a try. No, 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 they just aren't for me. I wouldn't eat a carrot, even if it were free. All his friends laugh. What a stubborn gnome. If he never tries a carrot, how will he ever know? Norman didn't understand why everyone was so upset. I still eat cabbage, cauliflower, and even courgettes. Come on, Norman, just a little taste. It would be a shame for all these carrots to all go to waste. No, no, no. Oh, okay, well, fine. I'll taste this carrot for the first and the last time. Reluctantly, Norman leant in for a bite. The teeniest taste took all of his might. His face lit up. Well, this is a surprise. Who would have thought carrots would taste this nice? I'm sorry, everyone, I was such a stubborn gnome. If I'd never tasted this carrot, I would have never known. Curiously crunchy and suspiciously sweet, all from a food I vowed I'd never eat. And that's my story.
Yay! Thank you. I was just in the middle of typing, Amber, so I got a bit distracted. Sorry. I was just saying it reminded me loads of the, Charlie and Lola, the series. It reminded me of, I love the one, I will not ever, never eat a tomato. Thank you.
That was great. And lovely examples. I mean, interesting stuff with rhyme there, Amber. So you've got kind of pure rhyme, but you've got this interesting thing called assonance, which is what they use in where you've got kind of the long O sounds. So gnome and I can't quite remember what that rhymed with sometimes, but it's got not a full rhyme, but an assonant rhyme where you're rhyming the middle sound and the sort of the end sound, which I thought worked really brilliantly. Really fabulous stuff. Great. We had one more volunteer.
Vinette.
Vinette.
Yep.
Vinette, you are on.
Good afternoon.
Hey.
Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, cool. I'm not going to show my face because I just don't want to. So yeah, here it goes. Once upon a time.
Your profile picture is very smiley, so we'll look at that.
Once upon a time, there lived a hole puncher, stapler, and a pen. Every day they would argue about who was the most useful. The pen would say, "I'm the most useful because I'm used daily. I'm used for almost everything. For example, writing lists, jotting notes, scribing beautiful letters, and let's not forget, I'm multi-purposeful. I'm also used for a hair tie." The stapler would interrupt and bellow, "Don't be silly. I'm the most helpful. I secure important documents together. Don't forget, I can be used as a paperweight too." Before the stapler could finish, he was rudely interrupted by the hole puncher. "Hold on a moment. You're forgetting that I'm the most beneficial. Not only can I be used as a paperweight, but I can pierce holes into all different sizes of paper. I'm so important because if it wasn't for me, humans would be stuck. Folders and ring binders would be of no use without me. Puncturing holes is supreme." What all three pieces of equipment failed to realize and understand was that each of them were equally important and useful in their own individual ways. No one was more significant than the other. Their owner used each of them daily and was appreciative for each of their different qualities. The end.
Yay! I love that. I could really visualize it. Do you know what that reminded me a little bit of? Does anybody know the book The Day the Crayons Quit? If you don't, it's a super duper duper picture book with a sequel to it, but it's like whether all the crayons have attitude and characters, and it really reminds me of that. Thank you, Vinette.
Yeah, brilliant, Vinette. Fantastic stuff. Again, it's interesting, isn't it? We've got another sort of story with a message there about kind of taking away the hierarchy, everybody being equally important. Great stuff.
We do have Alexandra Quantrill. I think it's Ali Alexandra. I'm not sure. I don't want to get it wrong. I know one of the Alexandras is Ali, but I don't know if you've got time to sneak in to sneak in a last one, Andrew. What do you think?
Yeah, let's go for it. I think we've got time.
Excellent.
Okay, I'm just going to switch on my thing. Yeah, my husband was laughing at me the other day and I read it to my son who walked away, so I don't know if it's very good.
Great.
So mine's about a dinosaur, so I hope you can see it, and a woman. Stomp, stomp, roar, stomp, stomp, roar, rumble, rumble, stomp, stomp, roar. Hey, 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 hello, my name's Terry. I'm rather big and slightly smelly and have a great big rumbly belly. Terry brought with him a loaf of bread. Well, we actually ate the bread, so I haven't got any bread, so I had to bring something else. It's brown and gluten-free, Terry said. I want something yummy on this slice here to make my tummy rumble disappear. Oh, hello, Terry. My name's Kerry, said Kerry, thinking, help, I might end up in his belly. Kerry started to think on her feet. I must convince him of an alternative to eat. I don't want to end up as his dinner. A plant-based diet is a winner. Stomp, stomp, roar, stomp, stomp, roar, rumble, rumble, stomp, stomp, roar. I'm not sure, said Terry the T-Rex, although I've heard they're versatile and the rest. Yes, indeed, that's quite right. Please fill your belly with much delight. I'll find you something for this slice of bread. What's your favourite colour? Well, it's red. Okay. Firstly, I give you strawberries, tomatoes and cherries, red pepper, red onions and raspberries, red apple, rhubarb, to name a few more. They'll help fill you up and settle your roar. Said Terry, who gobbled the food down. He then looked at Kerry and gave her a frown. I'm not sure. Me, I still need something tasty for my tea. I want something delicious on this slice of bread. If you can't convince me, I'll eat you instead. No, wait, I'll show you, honey. It's golden, delicious, sticky and runny. It's made by bees inside their hives. They pollinate all plants to help us survive. It's great on bread, salad and cheese, or just about anything, I'm sure you'll agree. Stomp, stomp, roar, stomp, stomp, roar. What's the matter? Aren't you sure? Terry stood there looking slightly perplexed. I think honey production sounds complex. It's definitely not filled my rumbly belly, so I'm going to have to eat you now, Kerry. Stomp, stomp, raw. Gurgle, gurgle. Stomp, stomp, raw. So what's the moral of the story before it turned a little gory? We need bees to help us all. They're very important, even if they're small. The end.
Oh, yay! I love that. The smelly dinosaur.
Fantastic. We were looking at vegetarianism and all sorts of things for a moment there. Wonderful stuff. That's fabulous. I'm bowled over. That's amazing. Thanks for your contributions this afternoon. And to be honest, I'm really relieved. You've had enough of my voice this afternoon. It was great to have some other people telling their stories. Catherine.
Hello.
Any closing thoughts?
I don't know, but thank you very much, all the storytellers. That was really good. And if anybody, I'm a bit loath to just ditch the storytelling, because I wonder if some people now will think, actually, do you know what, I wanted to have my story go. So maybe we'll see if we can have a little storytelling slot at, say, the end of next week's session. And if anybody's up for it, then we can say at the end, if you're feeling in the moment and you want to, then great, and if not, not. But I think that was really nice to hear other people's voices. It's so nice to see you all gradually, rather than just sort of talking to the screen. So that was lovely too. So hopefully you're all really clear now on what you need to do going forward. So basically, it's the phonics workbook, which you can get from this site or Moodle. If you haven't managed to upload your action plan to Moodle, if you could do that. There was a question about whether we wanted them uploaded to Moodle and Mosaic, and the answer is yes, please, because at the moment there are some issues with tutors getting access to Mosaic, apparently. So if you do Moodle, if you upload to Moodle, that will be very, very helpful. You don't need to re-upload. If you've decided to tweak your action plan, you don't need to resubmit. It's your working document. And yes, you can now crack on and start to carry out some of the actions for that. Next week, I know, you know, if you're brand new to phonics, as we all were once upon a time, phonics is a bit of a closed book, and you suddenly feel it's literally a whole new language to learn. Please don't feel discouraged if anybody is. I used to feel terribly left out because I was a Key Stage 2 teacher, and so they sort of banned me from the phonics training in school, and all these other teachers were walking around really excitedly with like puppets doing Fred fingers, and I hadn't got a clue what they were on about. So, you know, we've all had a moment of it feels like a very alien thing. Hopefully this will have helped set the sort of tone of phonics. We will have another session on phonics next week, which will be more, it's called planning and assessment. It'll be less boring than that, I promise. But we'll talk some more about phonics, and we'll have a go at some phonics things and watch some videos, hopefully. And hopefully that will start to make those of you who are not very familiar with phonics just a little bit more confident about it all. And to be honest, until you've got into school and you've had a go at teaching it, it's all a bit abstract, and that there's nothing really you can do about that unless you've got a willing child, like for example Ali might have a willing child victim at home to practice some phonics on, in which case have a go. So yeah, so we'll develop more knowledge. I do have our a sort of an external speaker coming in to do the phonics drop-in session, Ruth Moyler, who's a very, very experienced teacher from a school local to well, fairly local to South Bank, who has been doing a phonics drop-in session for us for several years now, and the students always really found her approach really useful, really, really good. So that's a drop-in, it's optional, but I'll strongly encourage you to go along to that if you're able. It's on a Monday, not this Monday coming, but I'll remind you about that next week.